Next on the news.
Shots fired, shots fired.
It happened in Bristol, Connecticut, and it's happening nationwide. Police officers being targeted and killed in ambush attacks. And new proof that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis isn't planning to stop the flights of migrants bound for other states. Also, they're a tight-knit group of women spreading love one stitch at a time. Yarns of Love has been helping the community and each other for generations. Plus, there were more than 1,000 left at memorials to honor the late Queen Elizabeth II. Now, these teddy bears will have a new purpose, brighten the lives of children. I'm Jessica Easthope. Currents News starts right now. It's a disturbing trend that's emerging across the U.S. Crimes against cops growing with no end in sight. Those who have been charged with protecting and serving the people are being ambushed and killed in the line of duty. The latest attack in Connecticut only a grim reminder of the reality gripping other cities nationwide. So far, 2022 has been an especially violent and deadly year for law enforcement in America. In Bristol, Connecticut last week, 3 officers were allegedly ambushed and shot. Only one survived. The gunman may have lured them there by making a false 911 call, according to investigators.
Shots fired, shots fired. More cars, send everyone. He's down. One down. Suspect down.
And in Philadelphia,
I'm shot and hit my partner, shot in the leg.
3 SWAT officers were shot in the line of duty last week.
I'm outraged. I'm disgusted. I'm wondering where the level of outrage and upset is outside of the law enforcement community.
Danielle Outlaw is Philadelphia's police commissioner.
And right now things are wrong because the level of violence that we're seeing against our law enforcement officers is just beyond outrageous.
Across the country, there have been 252 officers shot in the line of duty through September of this year, according to the National Fraternal Order of Police. 50 were killed. It's a continuation of a rising violent trend, according to the FOP. 44 law enforcement officers were killed by gunfire in the line of duty during the same time period last year, adding up to officers being fatally shot more often than once a week during that time. In El Monte, California, a suburb of Los Angeles, 2 officers were killed this summer as they responded to a call about a stabbing.
They were acting as the first line of defense for our community members when they were essentially ambushed.
In fact, there have been 63 ambush-style attacks on law enforcement through September of this year, according to the FOP. At least 93 officers were shot during those onslaughts, and 24 died as a result. In 2021, data from the FBI shows the highest number of law enforcement officers were intentionally killed in the line of duty since the September 11th terrorist attacks, 20 years earlier. The data mirrors a rise in gun violence in many parts of the country in recent years, now rising to levels not seen since the mid-1990s. A teenage gunman killed 5 people in Raleigh, North Carolina last week. A responding police officer was injured in the shooting. The increasing violence against police has law enforcement leaders across the country sounding the alarm.
These are folks that answered a call to serve. They want to give back. We sign up to do this understanding the risk, understanding the danger, but we did not sign up for these jobs to be martyrs. We just didn't.
Not only are law enforcement leaders concerned about their own people, there's also a concern this recent wave of violence might affect recruitment, which could impact public safety for years to come. The memorial for the fallen officers in Bristol, Connecticut is growing, and the community is deeply grieving over the loss of the 2 heroes.
It was hard. It was hard to hear.
Residents have been coming down to the memorial outside the police department, leaving flowers, American flags, and messages behind. An entire squad car has almost been covered with flowers and other items. The community is heartbroken over the loss of officers Dustin DeMonte and Alex Homsey.
It's a tragedy. It's just a horrible, horrible tragedy. My heart is with the families of each of these slain officers. It was so senseless.
Police say the 3 officers were lured to a home last Wednesday night under the guise of a call for help. The 3rd officer, who was wounded, Alec Iriwato, returned fire and killed the suspect. The recent murders in Bristol are affecting police departments all over the country. Here in New York, low morale is spurring a staffing crisis. The last graduating class in July only saw 561 new officers. Since then, more than 900 have filed paperwork to quit or retire. The NYPD also says there are around 1,600 officers below its budgeted headcount. The Police Benevolent Association blames the numbers on low pay, crushing workloads, and constant abuse. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has plans to continue migrant flights to northern states. That's according to the newly released records showing the state paid nearly $1 million to arrange 2 sets of flights to Illinois and Delaware, which is President Biden's home state. Back on September 14th, 2 planes took 48 migrants from San Antonio, Texas to Martha's Vineyard, paid for by the state of Florida. President Biden is turning to Title 42 to expel a number of Venezuelan migrants. Biden has denounced the Trump-era rule, which allows the U.S. to keep migrants out over concerns about the spread of COVID-19. Now, the president has invoked Title 42 to deny a growing number of Venezuelans from requesting asylum at the border. While many Venezuelans who walk or swim across the U.S. southern border will be expelled under the rule, as many as 24,000 will be accepted at U.S. airports. Here in New York City, around 17,000 migrants have arrived since April. Those numbers are overwhelming the city's shelter system. According to data from the Department of Homeless Services, on October 10th, more than 62,000 individuals stayed in city shelters. That breaks the previous record from January of 2019, when there were 61,415 people. The city has been forced to find emergency shelters for more than 14,000 migrants to keep up with the influx. Queens is taking the brunt of that housing, almost 5,000 migrants, or 32% of that number. Below that is Brooklyn, which is housing more than 3,900 migrants. Next is Manhattan with more than 2,900. Then the Bronx at more than 2,500. And Staten Island is housing close to 600. Explosions rocked the Ukrainian capital of Kiev Monday in a kamikaze attack by drones. At least 4 people were killed and more than a dozen injured. As Chris Wynn reports, the attack comes 1 week after Russia began an intense bombardment of civilian targets.
Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, bombarded with kamikaze drones on Monday, according to Ukrainian officials who repeated their calls for Western allies to supply the country with more advanced air defense systems. Kiev's security forces fighting back, shooting down 36 of 42 drones that were launched by Russia.
The Russians tried to destroy critical infrastructure of our hometown. Before the winter, they want to switch off the electricity and to make an attack to our power plants, stations.
The drone attacks come after Moscow fired hundreds of missiles at civilians across Ukraine last week.
Putin has had a very bad 3 months. His offensive in Donbass was stopped in mid-July. You've had this great counteroffensive by the Ukrainians. And then you had the blow-up of the Kerch Bridge, which is vital for Russian military supplies for their forces in southern Ukraine.
The Biden administration will now factor in Russia's use of these drones in its future planning as it pertains to helping Ukraine, according to a senior administration official. A pregnant woman among those killed in the strikes as search and rescue operations continue.
I suspect Zelensky has no interest in conceding any land of Ukraine to Russia because of the great Russian war crimes committed against the Ukrainian people, which includes the rape of Ukrainian women, the abduction of Ukrainian children, and massive torture.
Chris Wynn, Currents News.
European bishops have expressed deep sadness at the suffering in Ukraine, calling for an end to the conflict. They released a statement last week, reading in part, quote, "In full communion with the numerous appeals made by Pope Francis and the Holy See, we too make a strong appeal to the aggressors immediately to suspend the hostilities and to all parties to open themselves up to negotiation of serious proposals for a just peace, to work toward a solution to the conflict which respects international law and the territorial integrity of Ukraine." This weekend, the Diocese of Immigrants combined culture and Christ with a Polish heritage mass. The Mass at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph in Brooklyn celebrated Polish American Heritage Month, and it also honored the pontificate of a much-loved Polish pontiff, Pope St. John Paul II, who was elected as Pope 44 years ago this past Sunday. The main celebrant of the Mass was Polish Bishop Piotr Czynski, but Brooklyn Bishop Robert Brennan did stop by to greet the Polish people of the Diocese of Brooklyn and honor Pope St. John Paul II.
He had a way of lifting us all up and inspiring us in the faith. As St. Paul will say today in his letter to Timothy, proclaim the gospel always when it's convenient and inconvenient. I can't think of a better modern day example. My Polish isn't very good, but can I say, is it Szczęść Boże? Is that close enough? Okay, God bless.
The Polish-American people then thanked the Bishop of Brooklyn and gave him flowers and some vestments with images of Pope John Paul II on them. And congratulations are in order for a priest from the Diocese of Brooklyn who got a high honor in the church this weekend.
My brother priest received these symbols adorned with the saving cross.
There in that group of priests is Father Dwayne Davis, pastor of St. Thomas Aquinas Church in Flatlands, Brooklyn. He became a member of the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre during a mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral on Saturday. The Catholic Order of Knighthood dates back to the 11th century and is dedicated to supporting Christianity in Jerusalem. Father Davis talked to Currents News about his new service and his love for the Holy Land.
To me, it's a great honor to be able to help my brothers and sisters, especially my brothers and sisters in the Holy Land and the place of Jesus' birth, to help to continue Christianity there, to make sure there's a Christian footprint in the Holy Land for as long as we can make that possible. I've been to the Holy Land twice myself, and I've been transformed by my experience in the Holy Land. One can never go to the Holy Land and read the scriptures the same ever again.
Father Davis went on to encourage every Catholic and Christian to go to Jerusalem. He said it will transform and change your life. Becoming a member of the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre is a commitment for life. Normally, a candidate is put forward by an existing member. The delegate and section head in their area will then do an initial interview of the candidate. If they meet the requirements, they begin a period of training of no less than 12 months. Once they complete that, they may apply for admission through the local lieutenancy. Pope Francis has announced that the Synod on Synodality will now be extended through 2024. The Holy Father made the announcement after praying the Angelus. Rather than ending with a gathering of bishops in October of 2023, they will join together for a second meeting in October of 2024. The Pope says it is necessary not to rush the synodal process. It involves the bishops and Pope listening to the voice of the people of God to then shape how the United Church makes decisions. There's a lot more news headed your way. They're a close-knit group bound by faith. Next, how this group of women have been helping their community for generations. And it's part of the Eucharistic Revival campaign. We'll have new details on the handbook. Plus, listen to this. Hearing aids are now available over the counter. What retailers will be carrying the devices for millions of Americans.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
Front post, back post.
A tight-knit group of women practicing their craft and their faith at the same time. Yarn is the medium of their ministry, and every year they give away hundreds of handmade items. Yarns of Love knit and crochet with the hope of bringing others a little warmth and comfort. Over the years, they've helped new parents, people battling cancer, and the elderly. And though they don't do it for a thank you, they've gotten something in return.
1, 2, 3.
Their patterns are complicated.
Now I have to increase.
But their purpose is simple.
This is really a gift of love.
This group of women, known as Yarns of Love, has knitted, crocheted, and given away thousands of items to newly baptized babies, people living out their last years in nursing homes.
This is for the coat drive.
And everyone in between. They get together a few times a month in the basement of Resurrection Church in Gerritsen Beach. Phyllis Adali founded the group 11 years ago.
It started as a learning group. You know, I offered to teach, to get women together to make friends.
Though the ladies have been making things together for over a decade,
There would I go, Gail? Right there.
Gail Cassidy's crochet hook has a few more miles on it.
Well, I started when I was 12. My grandmother taught me how to knit. And ever since then, it's just been something I love to do and love to give to people, and keeps my fingers busy and out of trouble.
Each woman brings her own skill to the table. Angela tried to teach me. It's not as hard as it looks.
Look at
it's
you.
harder.
Look at you. Go. Okay.
And with their craft comes community and an outreach Father William With says the church is grateful for.
They make things to extend their ministry and the love of God to others.
They're with each other through thick and thin, and when things unravel, they support each other.
I don't think I would have felt as comfortable in the neighborhood as I do now without all these ladies.
God bless you, Yarns of Love.
And they don't do it for a thank you.
They don't know who's in the group. There's no face. So we're all invisible angels.
When Yarns of Love get together, even if their products aren't finished or imperfect, they make something beautiful. If you're interested in joining Yarns of Love, you can call the Resurrection Church Rectory at 718-743-7234. An update now on the Eucharistic Revival campaign happening throughout the nation. The team organizing the revival has released a playbook, which is meant to assist diocesan leaders, priests, and school administrators in coming up with plans to bring excitement about the Eucharist in their communities. The book gives practical suggestions for fostering personal encounters with Christ in the Eucharist, including Eucharistic processions, retreats, and evenings of adoration. It also advises parishes to offer formation programs to teach Catholics about the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. It's much needed. According to a 2019 Pew Research study, 69% of Catholics do not believe the bread and wine becomes Christ's body and blood, a core belief of our faith. It was because of that study that in 2021, the bishops called for a multi-year national Eucharistic revival campaign in order to restore and promote an understanding of the Eucharist. The initiative will culminate in a national Eucharistic Congress in 2024. The bishops hope that meeting will be attended by more than 80,000 Catholics. The campaign has already kicked off in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Currents News' Christine Persichetti spoke with one of the organizers for Brooklyn, Father Carlos Velasquez.
The Eucharistic Revival is really an invitation to us to answer some of those questions and some of those pains, those sorrows that we're going through. We have people who maybe don't believe. We have people who maybe take the Eucharist for granted. We live in a culture that doesn't really accept God. We live in a culture and even in a country where sometimes God takes the back seat. And the Eucharistic Revival is a reminder and an invitation to us to truly understand what the Eucharist is about and to realize that God gives us his very self in the Eucharist, his very presence, not something like him, not an example or a symbol of him, but his very self, in order that we may consume him and that we may become more like him so that we can transform the world. And that's what this whole time is going to be about. The whole revival is about us learning more about what the Eucharist is, to re-evangelize ourselves and to get us more on fire. You know, this is not a program.
Go out and get them back.
Exactly. It's not a program. It's not another initiative. The whole idea behind this is setting a fire and lighting a fire.
The Eucharistic Revival campaign began on the Feast of Corpus Christi. Eucharistic processions were held all over Brooklyn and Queens. To learn more about the campaign and how to take part, just go to eucharisticrevival.org. For the first time ever, hearing aids are now available over the counter. This now ushers in cheaper and potentially better options for Americans. As Ivan Rodriguez reports, the devices will be available at CVS, Walgreens, and Best Buy.
We have big news today, and that is going to benefit as many as 30 million Americans.
For the first time, hearing aids can now be purchased over the counter without a prescription, exam, or fitting, following an August rule change by the FDA.
The people most helped are adults with mild to moderate hearing loss who might not take that first step.
The White House says hearing aids will soon be available at major retailers, including Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, and Best Buy, and claim this could save people as much as $3,000 per year.
That's thousands of dollars going back into the pockets of Americans.
Experts say leaving hearing loss untreated could be detrimental to overall health. Studies have shown some links to dementia, poor mental health, and increased risks of falls.
Hearing health is part of overall wellness, just as is your blood pressure, cholesterol, your weight, everything else, to staying fit.
Many hope the increased availability of hearing aids will also help remove the stigma attached to wearing devices, while the increased competition could lead to cheaper, better technology in the future.
The future is bright in how we can use them and how they might be impacting our ability to track our health.
Ivan Rodriguez, Currents News.
They can get you a burger or other fast food, but now Uber Eats is delivering pot. The delivery service was launched exclusively in Toronto, Canada. Uber Eats has teamed up with the online cannabis marketplace Leafly. Employees from the retailer will handle the drop-offs rather than Uber drivers. Customers must also be able to prove that they are at least 19 years old at the time of delivery. Still to come on Currents News, they are seminarians in Rome who are praying but also playing cricket as a part of their formation. Plus, more than 1,000 were left at memorials for Queen Elizabeth II, but now these teddy bears are going to brighten the lives of kids in the UK. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. They have dedicated their lives to God and the church, but now seminarians in Rome are making the St. Peter's Cricket Club part of their formation. Kelsey Gussie has the details.
Priests, deacons, and seminarians come to Rome to live and study at the heart of the Catholic Church, but some receive formation both in the chapel and in another unlikely place, the cricket pitch.
The basic idea is to give an image of the priesthood that is positive. We are priests and seminarians who play cricket, not cricketers who happen to be priests and seminarians. It's to give that witness to the Catholic priesthood. All on the team are priests, deacons, seminarians, working, studying here in Rome, and that's who we are.
Father O'Higgins believes cricket, the second most popular sport in the world, is a little piece of home for the many Australian, Sri Lankan, Indian, and Pakistani seminarians and priests living in Rome. But he also sees the game as teaching other important lessons for a well-rounded priestly formation.
You've got to learn a discipline. You've got to learn to play with others. In cricket in particular, it's important. You've got two batsmen out in the field at the same time. Communication, that's been a challenge for us. We've got an international team. So the cultural differences are something as well that we've had to overcome.
This diverse team's mission is not just to win as many matches as possible, but to use the image of competitive priests and seminarians as a message of evangelization.
That was Kelsey Gussie reporting. Meanwhile, the Vatican's amateur cricket team is used to establish ties between the church and countries and regions where the sport is popular, including India and the Caribbean. And finally tonight, a tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth II by the British people will now go to kids in need. After the Queen passed on September 8th, more than 1,000 teddy bears were left outside the royal residences in London and Windsor. The bears have now been professionally cleaned and will be donated to Bernardo's, a British children's charity where the Queen was patron from 1983 to 2016. In a statement, Buckingham Palace said they hope the bears will be loved for many years to come. And that is Currents News. I'm Jessica Easthope in for Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.